When the lights go low and the shadows creep, stories forgotten begin to speak. Whispers of truth, twisted with fear. You've entered the dark, you're already here. Vivid nightmares.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Vivid Nightmares. I'm your host, Bridget Denise. And tonight, we're going deep into the stories Southern history tried to bury. The women it feared, the healers it turned into monsters, the conjurers it whispered about but never truly forgot. Some were midwives, some practiced root work, some just had the nerve to stand tall, smart, and unbothered in a time when that was enough to get you branded dangerous. And when something went wrong, the crops failed, the baby got sick, the storm rolled in, these women were the first to be blamed and the last to be mourned. This episode is about the Southern witches, root workers, and wise women who left a legacy soaked in moss, mist, and mystery. Some of them were feared for what they did. Some were feared for what folks imagined they could do. But either way, they made sure their names were never forgotten. Grab your salt, light your candles, and whatever you do, don't break the circle. Let's start with a woman who sang her own prophecy and brought a storm with her final breath, way down in the swampy stretch between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, where Spanish moss drips like whispers and the land hums with old secrets. There lived a woman named Julia Brown. Now, depending on who you ask, Julia was either a healer or a hex. She lived in the tiny settlement of Frenier in the early 1900s, a town surrounded by swamps, sawgrass, and silence. Julia was a root worker, a woman who understood herbs, poultices, prayers. She delivered babies, healed snake bites, made teas that cured coughs and teas that maybe kept your man faithful. But over time, the people of Frenier started treating her more like a tool than a neighbor. They came to her when they needed something, and then they turned their backs. So Julia, being Julia, started singing. Not church hymns, not lullabies. She'd sit on her porch rocking back and forth and sing things like, "One day, I'm gonna die and take the whole town with me." Creepy, right? But folks didn't listen. Or if they did, they laughed it off. Old woman talk. Swamp superstition. Until September 29th, 1915. The day Julia Brown died, a hurricane hit. And not just a storm, a monster. Winds over 100 miles per hour. Waves that swallowed the land. Whole towns, Frenier included, were wiped off the map. Almost every resident was killed. The cemetery was destroyed. Bodies were never recovered. And guess whose funeral they were preparing? When the storm hit, Julia Brown's. Rescue workers later said her coffin was found floating in the swamp, alone, upright, untouched. I mean, if that's not power, I don't know what is. To this day, the land where Frenier once stood is ghost town quiet. Locals say you can still hear humming in the trees, especially near the old cypress grove. Sometimes it's soft, sometimes it's right behind you. Paranormal teams have picked up whispers, EMF spikes, and sudden drops in temperature around the old train tracks near Lake Pontchartrain. Some say Julia's still there, watching, not mad, not vengeful, just reminding folks not to forget her. Julia warned them. And when she left, she made sure they remembered who had the real power. Next, we're heading to Mississippi, where a chained grave still tries to hold back a woman the whole town feared, even in death. Next stop on this hex little tour? Yazoo City, Mississippi. Now look, if a town chains down someone's grave, that's usually a clue that something went very, very wrong. And in this case, it's a whole legend built around one woman, one curse, and a whole lot of fear. Let's rewind. Back in the late 1800s, there was a woman who lived alone in the swamps just outside of Yazoo. No name, no church records, just stories. Locals said she was strange, didn't talk to anyone, never came to town unless it was for supplies, and even then she'd vanish before sundown. And of course, because she was a woman alone and confident, folks started calling her a witch. Shocking, I know. A woman who minds her business definitely gotta be supernatural. Anyway, one day, two boys go missing. A search party goes out into the swamp, and they say they find the witch's shack. Inside, the boys' bodies. Now listen, there's no proof this ever happened. It's pure legend. But the story goes that the townspeople chased her through the swamp, and just before they caught her, she cursed them. With her last breath, she screamed, "In 20 years, I will return and burn this town to the ground." They caught her, hanged her, buried her in Glenwood Cemetery, in an unmarked grave. But just in case, they chained it shut, literally, wrapped heavy iron chains around the tomb. And then, 20 years later, 1904, a massive fire broke out in Yazoo City. The flames tore through 200 homes and almost every business downtown. The courthouse burned. The bank collapsed. Even the jail went up in smoke. No known cause, no lightning, no faulty wiring, just fire and chaos. Townsfolk rushed to the cemetery the next morning. They found the chains around the witch's grave snapped, twisted metal, stone cracked open. And y'all, they replaced the chains. To this day, Glenwood Cemetery keeps the witch's grave locked down. Fresh chains, bolted tight. The city even leans into the legend. Tour guides will walk you straight to it. But folks who've lingered too long say they feel watched. Phones die. Voices whisper. And one woman, a paranormal investigator, said she caught a voice on her recorder that simply said, "I warned you." Honestly, if she did burn the place down, she was punctual, real witch, angry spirit, or just a woman who got tired of being underestimated. Either way, the chain stayed. Coming up next, we're heading west to Texas, where another woman's story ended in fire, but her ghost never left the land that betrayed her.
This show runs on coffee, research rabbit holes, and Southern ghost stories whispered in the dark. If you'd like to support Vivid Nightmares, consider leaving a rating and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show reach more listeners. And if you want even more haunted history and unsolved stories, visit our link in the show notes to grab bonus content and more. Thanks for helping keep the nightmares vivid.
We're heading west now, into the hill country of Texas, where fire and fear turned a woman into a ghost, and a ghost into a legend. This is the story of Molly Dyer, a name still whispered in and around Hood County, especially near Granbury. Now, like a lot of Southern witch stories, this one has layers. Truth, legend, a little of both. What's clear is that Molly lived out past town in a small wooden cabin, alone. She was a healer, a midwife, and some say, a witch. The people came to her when they needed help. Sick babies, bleeding wounds, wives in labor, and she helped. Every time. Until something went wrong. One story says a prominent townsperson's child died after Molly treated them. Another says the crops failed and folks needed someone to blame. It's always the women who don't beg for approval that end up blamed. Whatever the reason, the whispers turned violent. A group of townsfolk stormed her cabin one night, dragged her out, accused her of witchcraft, and, according to legend, burned her alive on the hillside behind her home. Some say she cursed them with her dying breath. Others say she didn't speak at all, just screamed and screamed until the wind swallowed her voice. The next morning, her charred body was found sprawled across the hilltop, ashes scattered, eyes still open. And that hill has never been the same. Locals call it Molly's Hill. Animals won't go near it. Fires won't light there. Some say at night you can see her silhouette, arms outstretched, flames licking her skin, still crying out for justice. Ghost hunters have picked up high EMF readings and disembodied females sobbing. Visitors report sudden heat, even in the dead of winter. And more than one person claims they've seen a woman, burned and blackened, just standing in the tree line, waiting. And then there's the wind. People say it howls differently on that hill. Sharp, personal, like it's carrying her voice. There's no grave for Molly Dyer. No marker, no apology. But the town remembers her, whether they admit it or not. And the land never forgot. Sometimes the fire doesn't cleanse. It scorches the truth so deep into the earth, you can still hear it scream. Next, we're heading to the Low Country, where conjure and communion are sacred traditions, and one woman held power in the roots and the bones. Our next story brings us to the South Carolina Low Country, a place thick with Spanish moss, Gullah tradition, and ancestral memory. And in the town of Beaufort, if you listen to the right folks, they'll tell you about the root doctor.
If this episode gave you chills or made you side-eye your hallway, share it with someone else who loves a good scare. Word of mouth is how we grow this haunted little community. And trust me, the more of us here, the darker it gets. Send it to your favorite true crime buddy or that one friend who swears they don't believe in ghosts yet.
Now, there wasn't just one. Root Doctor is a title passed down, not just a name. But one woman in particular, she left a mark so deep the soil still won't let it go. They say she was born sometime in the 1930s, maybe earlier, on St. Helena Island. No birth certificate, no formal education. But she knew things about people, about pain, about power. She practiced hoodoo, not to be confused with voodoo, by the way. Root work passed down through African native and Black Southern traditions. She used herbs, chants, Bible verses, bones, oils, and intention. People came to her for everything: love spells, protection, hex removals, even business success. And listen, church folks would talk trash about her on Sunday, but visit her by Monday when their luck turned bad. Southern hypocrisy, immaculate, truly. Now, she never advertised, never wrote anything down. If she didn't like you, you didn't get help. Some say she kept her tools in a hollowed-out Bible. Others say she wore white and never touched anyone without praying over them first. And some folks feared her, not because she hurt people, but because she could. There's one story that gets told a lot around Beaufort. A man tried to stiff her, said she was a fraud after she cured his daughter of an unknown illness. 2 days later, he lost his voice, literally. Doctors found nothing wrong. He could whisper, grunt, but never speak again. And when someone asked her about it, she allegedly said, "I didn't take his voice. He gave it away when he called me a liar." Woohoo. After she passed in the early 2000s, folks say the energy around her cabin never settled. Lights flicker, owls gather at night. There's even an old iron kettle out back, rusted shut, that no one's been able to move. Some say her spirit is still watching, making sure no one uses her name in vain. And others, well, they still leave offerings, coins, candles, crossroads dirt. Because in the Low Country, you don't play around with root work, and you always respect the ones who know the earth better than you do. She didn't need a broom or a black cat, just her roots, her rituals, and the spine to use them. Up next, We're heading back to Tennessee, where the infamous Bell Witch may not have acted alone. You've probably heard of the Bell Witch, one of the most famous poltergeist stories in American history. Takes place in Adams, Tennessee, early 1800s. But tonight, we're not just talking about the haunting. We're talking about the women behind the whispers. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about a ghost at all. Maybe it was about power, and the kind of power women weren't supposed to have. Let's go back. John Bell was a wealthy farmer in Tennessee. In the early 1800s, his family began experiencing strange occurrences. Knocks on the walls, blankets pulled off the bed, whispers at night. His daughter, Betsy Bell, was the main target. She claimed to be slapped, pinched, even stuck with pins by an invisible force. They called it the Bell Witch. The entity supposedly spoke, and get this, it talked a lot, scripture, gossip, curses. It hated John Bell, wanted him dead, said it out loud, and eventually, John Bell did die, foaming at the mouth, with an open vial of mysterious black liquid nearby. And that should have been the end of the story. But here's where it gets interesting. There was a woman in town named Kate Batts. She was strong-willed, outspoken, and owned property, which, in the 1800s, basically made her public enemy first. She had a long-standing feud with John Bell over land. And after the haunting started, the voice reportedly called itself Old Kate. Now, some historians, and let's be real, some deeply suspicious neighbors, thought Kate Batts was behind it all. Not by magic, but by manipulation. They believed she might have influenced Betsy, encouraged whispers in the dark, played into a tale that unraveled the Bell family from the inside out. Others say no, Kate was just a scapegoat, that the real root was abuse inside the Bell household, and the witch was a way to scream without using words. But here's another layer. There's evidence that Betsy's mother, Lucy Bell, may have known more than she ever said. She was quiet, gentle, but during the haunting, the spirit always protected her, brought her fruit when she was sick, sang to her, and y'all, spirits don't usually play favorites. Was Lucy the real voice behind it all, trying to shield her daughter from something darker? Was this a poltergeist, or a rebellion wrapped in ghost story clothing? We'll never know for sure. But what we do know is this. The Bell Witch never targeted the men after John died. It faded away, like its work was finished. Maybe it was a spirit. Maybe it was revenge. Maybe it was the only way a woman could speak truth without being punished for it. And we're closing out tonight with one last story. A haunting from Alabama about a midwife who brought life into the world until the world turned on her. Down in the marshes just outside of Monroeville, Alabama, there's an old tale folks used to tell when the nights got too still about a woman known only as Mama Dell. Now, nobody knows if that was her real name or just what people started calling her. What they do remember is that she was a midwife, a healer, and to some a witch. Mama Dell lived deep in the swamp, a single-room cabin half sunk into the earth, built from driftwood and rusted nails. She didn't go into town unless summoned, didn't take money, didn't speak unless spoken to. But when babies wouldn't turn, when fevers wouldn't break, when the preacher's prayers fell short, they called Mama Dell, and she came. She'd show up barefoot with a burlap bag of herbs and tools, her silver hair wrapped in red cloth, and eyes that didn't blink when she looked at you. And the thing is, she got results. Women stopped bleeding. Sick children walked again. Some even say she touched the dead, and they breathed. But the more she healed, the more they whispered, said she talked to trees, kept bones in jars, could steal your shadow if you crossed her. And when the crops failed one year, they turned on her, said she'd cursed the land, blamed her for miscarriages, bad luck, even a pastor's heart attack. A group of men came to her cabin one night, torches in hand. They say she stood there silent until the flames reached her porch. Then she looked up and said, "I brought life into this world, and y'all gonna repay me with fire?" They say she vanished, just like that, gone into the mist. The cabin burned, but nobody was found. No bones, no ash, just smoke, and a red cloth floating on the water the next morning. Today, the land where Mama Dell lived is fenced off, but people still leave offerings on the gate. Tiny shoes, bundles of rosemary, a doll wrapped in cloth. And if you walk too close to the tree line, you might hear humming, or see a woman in red standing just beyond the fog, watching, waiting. And if you're pregnant, turn around, because Mama Dell never forgot a child, even the ones who never made it out. She delivered life. They delivered fear. And when she left this world, she took the swamp with her. And that, y'all, wraps up this week's circle of stories here on Vivid Nightmares. We walked with the curse-singing Julia Brown in the Louisiana swamps, stared down the chained grave of the Witch of Yazoo, watched fire swallow the legacy of Molly Dyer, witnessed quiet power in the hands of a low-country root doctor, listened for the truth behind the Bell Witch legend, and paid our respects to the ghost of Mama Dell, whose hands brought life and still carry echoes of justice. These women weren't just witches. They were healers, caretakers, outsiders, mothers, warnings, and whether or not they had magic, they had power. And that's always been enough to scare people. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, share it with the person who's got crystals in their car, a tarot deck in their bag, and ain't afraid of a little swamp smoke. Subscribe, review, send a voice memo of your own haunted family tale. You know I'd love to hear it. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok and Vivid Nightmares Pod, or email your story to vividnightmarespod@gmail.com. I'm your host, Bridget Denise. And whether it's a hex, a hush, or a name carved into the wind, these women made sure they were remembered. But before you go, next week we're taking things roadside. Abandoned gas stations, haunted highways, hitchhiking phantoms. That's right. We're diving into roadside horror in the South. So keep your high beams on and never pick up a stranger near mile marker 13. I'll see you next Friday. Good night, y'all. And sweet, vivid dreams.
When the lights go low and the shadows creep, stories forgotten begin to speak. Whispers of truth, twisted with fear. You've entered the dark, you're already here. Vivid Nightmares.